He built a $32 billion crypto empire until one journalist uncovered the lie. November 11, 2022, 2:47 a.m., Nassau, Bahamas. The penthouse is dark except for the cold glow of 7 laptop screens. Sam Bankman-Fried hasn't slept in 36 hours. His fingers hover above the keyboard, trembling. On one screen, a Bloomberg terminal showing FTX's liquidity reserves plummeting in real time. On another, a cascade of withdrawal requests, $6 billion in the last 8 hours. On a third, his lawyers texting in all caps. His phone won't stop buzzing. Investors, employees, regulators, the SEC. He ignores them all. Outside, the ocean is calm. Inside, an empire is drowning. Somewhere in New York, a journalist named Ian Allison sits at his desk at CoinDesk, refreshing his article's view count. The number climbs 47,000, 94,000, 310,000. His leaked financial document, a single PDF obtained from an anonymous source, has just triggered the fastest collapse of a billionaire in modern history. The document revealed something impossible, something Sam had spent 3 years hiding. The numbers didn't lie. Alameda Research, Sam's trading firm, was propped up almost entirely by FTT, a token FTX itself had invented. Billions of dollars of customer money gone, vanished into risky bets, political donations, luxury real estate, and an elaborate fiction. By Monday, there will be an $8 billion hole in the balance sheet. By Wednesday, FTX will declare bankruptcy. By Thursday, Sam Bankman-Fried will be unemployed, under investigation, and facing life in prison. But how did the boy genius from MIT, the vegan who slept on a beanbag and drove a Toyota Corolla, become the architect of one of the largest financial frauds in history? And how did one journalist with one document bring it all crashing down? Before he was SBF, before the private jets and Super Bowl ads and meetings with presidents, Sam Bankman-Fried was a peculiar kid from the Bay Area with an obsession for numbers and an indifference to everything else. Born in 1992 to 2 Stanford law professors, Sam grew up in a world of rigorous intellectual debate, utilitarianism, and ethical philosophy. His parents weren't just successful. They were influential, well-connected academics who taught their son that wealth was a tool, not a goal. Money, young Sam learned, should be accumulated only to be given away. This philosophy had a name: effective altruism. The idea was seductive in its simplicity. Earn as much as possible, then donate it to causes that mathematically maximize human welfare. Malaria nets, AI safety research, pandemic preparedness. Sam would later claim he planned to give away 99% of his fortune. At MIT, Sam studied physics but found his calling in economics and probability. He was brilliant but odd, disheveled, socially awkward, fixated on expected value calculations to the point of absurdity. Professors remember him challenging moral assumptions in class, asking whether one should let a bus full of strangers die to save 2 loved ones, if the math demanded it. After graduating, Sam took a job at Jane Street Capital, one of the most prestigious quantitative trading firms in the world. He learned arbitrage, market inefficiencies, and how to move millions in milliseconds. He was good at it, very good, but he grew restless. In 2017, Bitcoin exploded, and Sam noticed something the rest of Wall Street missed: massive price discrepancies between cryptocurrency exchanges in different countries. In Japan, Bitcoin traded 10% higher than in the US. You could buy low, sell high, and pocket the difference. Risk-free profit, billions waiting to be claimed. So in 2019, Sam co-founded Alameda Research, a crypto trading firm designed to exploit these inefficiencies. The profits were staggering, sometimes $25 million a day. Sam was just 27 years old, but arbitrage opportunities don't last forever. As the gaps closed, Sam needed a new edge, so he built one, his own cryptocurrency exchange. In May 2019, FTX was born. FTX wasn't just another exchange. It was faster, sleeker, more sophisticated than its rivals. It offered exotic derivatives, leveraged tokens, and products even professional traders struggled to understand. It appealed to degenerate gamblers and Wall Street alike. Venture capitalists love the narrative, boy genius mathematician builds the future of finance. Within 18 months, FTX was valued at $1.2 billion. By 2021, that number was $32 billion. Sam's face was everywhere: magazine covers, conference stages, Capitol Hill. He schmoozed with Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, and Tom Brady. He bought naming rights to the Miami Heat arena for $135 million, and he spent $40 million on Super Bowl ads. He became the second largest donor to Joe Biden's 2020 campaign and promised to spend $1 billion on the 2024 election. He dressed like a slob: shorts, t-shirts, New Balance sneakers, and drove a beat-up Corolla, cultivating an image of monastic focus and altruistic detachment. "I don't care about the money," he'd say in interviews. "It's all going to charity." The media ate it up. Sam wasn't just a CEO, he was a philosopher king. The Steve Jobs of crypto. The savior who would make digital currency safe, respectable, legitimate. But underneath the altruistic branding and billion-dollar valuations, something was deeply, catastrophically wrong. Alameda and FTX were supposed to be separate. Chinese walls, independent balance sheets, no conflicts of interest. That's what Sam told investors, regulators, and customers. It was a lie. The lie was elegant in its simplicity, catastrophic in its scale. FTX and Alameda Research weren't separate companies. They were conjoined twins, sharing blood, organs, and a single fatal heart defect. While Sam told the world they operated independently, behind the scenes, Alameda had a secret backdoor into FTX's systems, a special exemption that allowed it to borrow customer funds without limit, without collateral, without permission. Think about that for a moment. When you deposited money into FTX, you believed it was yours, stored safely in your account, ready to withdraw whenever you wanted. But in reality, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your dollars were being quietly siphoned into Alameda's trading accounts to fund increasingly desperate high-risk bets. By mid-2022, Alameda had borrowed $8 billion from FTX. $8 billion. Money that belonged to customers who had no idea their funds were financing Sam's ambitions. But how do you hide an $8 billion hole? You fill it with something that looks like money but costs nothing to create. Enter FTT. FTT was FTX's own cryptocurrency token, a digital asset the company invented out of thin air. On paper, FTT had value because FTX promised to buy it back periodically, and because it offered users discounts on trading fees. In reality, it was a house of cards built on confidence and circular logic. FTX created FTT. Alameda held billions of dollars worth of FTT, and FTX's balance sheet treated that FTT as if it were cash. It was accounting alchemy. Create your own currency, assign it a value, use it as collateral, borrow real money against it. As long as everyone believed FTT was worth something, the illusion held. But the moment that belief cracked, the entire structure would collapse. Caroline Ellison understood this better than anyone. Caroline was CEO of Alameda Research and, inconveniently, Sam's on-again, off-again girlfriend. She was brilliant. MIT math degree, Jane Street alum, effective altruist. But she was also in over her head, managing billions in borrowed money with no real risk controls, no adult supervision, and a business model that depended on crypto prices only going up. In her private Google Docs and Signal messages, later obtained by prosecutors, Caroline expressed doubts. She worried about Alameda's massive leverage, the lack of hedging, the reliance on FTT. In one message, she confessed she felt unmoored and feared making a mistake that could blow up everything. She wasn't wrong to worry. Throughout 2022, the crypto market was bleeding. Bitcoin crashed from $69,000 to under $20,000. Ethereum collapsed by 70%. Dozens of companies went bankrupt: Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi, Three Arrows Capital. The industry was in free fall, and Alameda's bets were going catastrophically wrong. But Sam kept spending. $40 million on Super Bowl ads, $300 million on real estate in the Bahamas, $500 million on venture investments, millions more on political campaigns, celebrity endorsements, and effective altruism grants. To the world, FTX looked invincible. Inside, Alameda was hemorrhaging money, and the only thing keeping it alive was customer funds quietly stolen from FTX. Then, on November 2nd, 2022, everything changed. Ian Allison, a journalist at CoinDesk, received a leaked document from an anonymous source. It was Alameda Research's balance sheet, dated June 30th, 2022. The numbers were stunning. Alameda claimed $14.6 billion in assets, but $5.8 billion of that was FTT tokens. Another $3.3 billion was unlocked FTT, tokens that couldn't even be sold yet. In other words, more than half of Alameda's assets were a cryptocurrency that FTX itself had created. The emperor had no clothes. The genius boy billionaire was running a shell game. Allison published his findings on November 2nd. The headline was dry, almost academic. Divisions in Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto empire blur on his trading titan Alameda's balance sheet. But the implications were explosive. Within hours, crypto Twitter erupted. Traders, investors, and rival exchanges began asking the obvious questions. If Alameda's assets are mostly FTT, what happens if FTT crashes? If FTT crashes, can Alameda survive? If Alameda collapses, what happens to FTX? And most importantly, is FTX using customer money to prop up Alameda? Sam tried to reassure everyone. He tweeted that FTX was fine and had enough assets to cover all customer withdrawals. Caroline published a defensive blog post claiming Alameda had $10 billion in other assets not shown on the leaked balance sheet, but the damage was done. The questions had been asked. And the man who would answer them, who would light the match and watch Sam's empire burn, was already moving. His name was Changpeng Zhao, and he was about to declare war. Changpeng Zhao, known universally as CZ, was Sam Bankman-Fried's dark mirror. Where Sam was awkward and unkempt, CZ was smooth and composed. Where Sam preached effective altruism, CZ preached survival of the fittest. Where Sam courted regulators and politicians, CZ operated in the shadows, moving Binance's headquarters from country to country, always one step ahead of the law. But they had one thing in common: ruthlessness. CZ built Binance into the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world, processing more trades, holding more assets, wielding more power than any rival. FTX was the upstart, the challenger, the MIT golden boy trying to steal his throne. The two had clashed before. In 2021, Binance had invested in FTX, then sold its stake for $2.1 billion, most of it paid in FTT tokens. Now, as the CoinDesk article sent shockwaves through the crypto world, CZ saw his opportunity. He didn't just smell blood in the water, he was the shark. On November 6, 2022, at 1:23 p.m. UTC, CZ sent a tweet that would destroy a $32 billion company in 72 hours. As part of Binance's exit from FTX equity last year, Binance received roughly $2.1 billion USD equivalent in cash, BUSD, and FTT. Due to recent revelations that have come to light, we have decided to liquidate any remaining FTT on our books. Translation: I'm dumping $500 million worth of FTT tokens, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. It was a declaration of war disguised as prudent risk management. CZ knew exactly what would happen. If Binance sold its FTT, the price would crash. If the price crashed, Alameda's balance sheet would implode. If Alameda imploded, FTX would be exposed. And if FTX was exposed, customers would panic. Sam knew it too. Within minutes, he was on Twitter, fingers trembling, trying to contain the damage. A competitor is trying to go after us with false rumors. FTX is fine. Assets are fine. But it was too late. The run had begun. Picture a bank in the 1930s, crowds gathering outside, shouting, shoving, desperate to withdraw their money before it disappears. Now compress that scene into the digital age, where panic spreads at the speed of light and withdrawals happen with a click. Within 6 hours of CZ's tweet, customers requested $1 billion in withdrawals. By midnight, it was $3 billion. By the next morning, $6 billion. FTX's reserves couldn't handle it. The exchange began delaying withdrawals, then limiting them, then quietly stopping them altogether. Sam was in crisis mode, sleeping 90 minutes a night, trying to plug a hole that grew wider by the hour. He called every investor, every contact, every billionaire he'd ever met. He needed $8 billion fast. Without it, FTX was finished. On November 8th, in an act of desperation that stunned the financial world, Sam announced that FTX had reached an agreement to be acquired by Binance. CZ, his mortal enemy, would rescue him. The tweet was humiliating, the admission of defeat total. But CZ had no intention of actually buying FTX. The due diligence lasted less than 24 hours. When Binance's lawyers examined FTX's books, they found the $8 billion hole, the commingling of customer funds, the fraudulent balance sheets. On November 9th, CZ pulled out, tweeting simply, "Our hope was to be able to support FTX's customers. However, as a result of corporate due diligence, we have decided that we will not pursue the potential acquisition of FTX.com. Translation: You're on your own, Sam. Good luck." The crypto world watched in horror. If Binance, the biggest player in the industry, wouldn't touch FTX, then the rumors were true. The money was gone. Billions of dollars vanished. Inside FTX's Bahamas headquarters, chaos reigned. Employees frantically tried to process withdrawals, but the liquidity wasn't there. Some resorted to using their own money to pay small customers, hoping to buy time. Others just walked out, realizing the ship was sinking and there weren't enough lifeboats. Sam's inner circle, Caroline Ellison, Nishad Singh, Gary Wang, knew the truth. They'd helped build the lie, moving money between Alameda and FTX, falsifying balance sheets, reassuring investors with numbers they knew were fiction. Now, as the walls closed in, they began turning on each other, hiring separate lawyers, preparing for the inevitable. On November 10th, Sam sent a final, rambling message to employees. It was part apology, part delusion. "I'm sorry. I fed up. I should have been on top of this. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. We're going to try to do right by customers." But there was no doing right by customers. The money was gone. $8 billion of customer funds, life savings, college funds, retirement accounts, had been gambled away by Alameda Research in a series of catastrophically bad trades, propped up by a cryptocurrency token that was now worthless. On November 11th, at 4:45 a.m. Bahamas time, FTX filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Sam Bankman-Fried resigned as CEO. In the filing, the new CEO, a restructuring expert who'd overseen the liquidation of Enron, called FTX's record-keeping a complete failure of corporate controls, and stated he'd never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls at every level of an organization. The boy genius, the effective altruist, the future of finance, had presided over one of the most spectacular frauds in modern history, and he'd done it in full view of investors, regulators, and the media, all of whom had believed the lie. But Sam Bankman-Fried's fall wasn't over. It was only beginning. In the days following FTX's collapse, the world discovered just how deep the rot went. John J. Ray III, the bankruptcy expert who had dismantled Enron, was appointed the new CEO. His job was to find whatever assets remained and return them to the more than 1 million creditors who'd lost everything. What he found shocked even him, a man who'd seen the aftermath of corporate catastrophe dozens of times. FTX had no accounting department, no record of employee salaries, no list of bank accounts. Loans were approved via casual signal messages and emoji reactions. Executives communicated through an encrypted chat called wire fraud, a name that would later seem almost comically prophetic. Corporate funds were used to buy luxury properties in the Bahamas, with titles held in employees' names. $300 million disappeared into real estate. Another $1 billion vanished into venture investments that served no business purpose. Ray's court declaration was damning. "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. This wasn't just fraud. It was chaos masquerading as genius." But while FTX's corpse was being autopsied in bankruptcy court, Sam Bankman-Fried was still free, still tweeting, still granting interviews from his luxury penthouse in the Bahamas, and astonishingly, he was still trying to control the narrative. On November 16th, Sam agreed to a live interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin at the New York Times Dealbook Summit. The audacity was breathtaking. A man whose company had just vaporized $8 billion in customer funds, sitting on stage in a wrinkled t-shirt, attempting to rehabilitate his image before a global audience. "I didn't knowingly commingle funds," Sam claimed, his leg bouncing nervously. "I wasn't running Alameda. I didn't know the size of their position. I got disconnected from what was going on." It was a masterclass in deflection. The boy genius who'd built a $32 billion empire now claimed he'd been too busy, too distracted, too overwhelmed to notice that his trading firm was stealing billions from his exchange. He blamed poor internal labeling, communication failures, bad luck. The performance might have worked in 2021 when Sam was the media darling, the vegan philosopher king who slept on a beanbag and promised to save the world. But in November 2022, with forensic accountants unraveling his lies in real time, the act fell flat. Behind the scenes, his inner circle was collapsing. Caroline Ellison, the Alameda CEO and Sam's ex-girlfriend, had gone dark. So had Gary Wang, FTX's co-founder and chief technology officer, and Nishad Singh, the director of engineering. They weren't giving interviews, they weren't tweeting, they were hiring white-collar criminal defense attorneys and negotiating with federal prosecutors. Because while Sam was playing the misunderstood entrepreneur, the U.S. Department of Justice, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission were building a criminal case. And they had the receipts, signal messages, Google Docs, balance sheets, code repositories showing the backdoor Alameda had into FTX's system. A feature deliberately programmed to exempt Alameda from automatic liquidation, allowing it to maintain a negative balance of up to $65 billion. Testimony from employees who watched in real time as customer funds were transferred to cover Alameda's losses. On December 9, 2022, the Royal Bahamas Police, acting on a request from the U.S. government, surrounded Sam's luxury penthouse. It was 6:15 p.m. Sam was inside, pacing, refreshing Twitter, preparing for yet another interview, this time with a sympathetic crypto podcaster. He heard the knock, heavy, insistent. When he opened the door, officers pushed inside, badges drawn. "Samuel Bankman-Fried, you're under arrest." The charges read like a greatest hits of white-collar crime: wire fraud, securities fraud, commodities fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to violate campaign finance laws. If convicted on all counts, he faced over 100 years in prison. They handcuffed him and drove him to Fox Hill Prison, a facility notorious for overcrowding, violence, and inhumane conditions. The boy who'd lived in a $30 million penthouse now shared a cell with other inmates, sleeping on a concrete slab, eating slop from metal trays. His lawyers fought for bail, arguing he wasn't a flight risk. The Bahamian court disagreed. Sam spent 9 days in Fox Hill before finally being extradited to the United States. Back in New York, federal prosecutors were moving fast. They'd flipped Caroline, Gary, and Nishad. All three agreed to plead guilty and cooperate against Sam in exchange for reduced sentences. The trio would testify that Sam had directed the fraud, that he'd known customer funds were being used illegally, that he'd personally approved the commingling of assets and the falsification of balance sheets. The evidence was overwhelming. But Sam's lawyers prepared for trial anyway, crafting a defense built on plausible deniability, complexity, and the hope that a jury might believe their client was merely incompetent, not criminal. The trial began on October 3, 2023, in a federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Prosecutors called it one of the largest financial frauds in American history. Sam's defense called it a tragedy of mismanagement. For 30 days, the world watched as the prosecution methodically dismantled Sam's narrative. The courtroom was sterile, fluorescent lit, nothing like the gleaming conference stages where Sam Bankman-Fried had once commanded applause. Here, under the harsh gaze of Judge Lewis Kaplan, there was nowhere to hide. The prosecution's case was surgical. They didn't need to explain blockchain technology or the intricacies of cryptocurrency derivatives. They needed to prove something far simpler. Sam had lied, stolen, and covered it up. And they had witnesses who'd been in the room when he did it. Caroline Ellison took the stand first. She looked smaller than she had in photographs. Thin, pale, her voice barely above a whisper. But her testimony was devastating. She described how Sam had directed her to use FTX customer funds to cover Alameda's losses. How he'd told her to inflate Alameda's balance sheet by counting FTT tokens at inflated values. How, when she expressed concerns about the risk, Sam had reassured her, "We're too big to fail. Regulators won't let us collapse." The prosecutors displayed her private Google Docs where she'd written, "The loans from FTX were used for various investments and expenses. We borrowed funds from FTX to meet our obligations." In another document, she'd listed different narratives she could tell investors, lies Sam had instructed her to tell. She admitted she'd been in love with him, that their relationship had made everything more complicated, that she'd trusted him and believed naively that his altruistic mission justified the deception. But now, facing her own criminal charges, she saw the truth. They hadn't been building the future. They'd been running a con. Gary Wang testified next, the quiet, brilliant programmer who'd co-founded FTX with Sam at MIT. He explained, in technical detail, how he'd written code that gave Alameda special privileges, a $65 billion line of credit from FTX, exempt from the risk management systems that governed every other user. It wasn't a bug, it was a feature. Sam had asked for it, and Gary had built it. Did Sam Bankman-Fried know that Alameda was using FTX customer funds? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Gary said. He directed it. Nishad Singh, the engineering director, corroborated everything. He described how, in mid-2022, he'd discovered the $8 billion hole and confronted Sam. Sam had been calm, almost dismissive. We'll make it back, he'd said. Alameda just needs one good trade. But there was no good trade. Only desperation, delusion, and an increasingly frantic scramble to hide the truth from investors, auditors, and customers. The prosecution showed the jury spreadsheets, signal messages, and financial records. They proved that Sam had spent customer money on political donations, $40 million to Democrats, millions more to Republicans through straw donors. They showed he'd bought a $16 million property for his parents, luxury condos for executives, invested in companies that had no connection to FTX's business. The defense's strategy was to paint Sam as overwhelmed, not malicious. A young CEO managing explosive growth, making mistakes but never intending harm. They argued the collapse was triggered by a market panic, not fraud. That Sam had believed genuinely that FTX was solvent. Then Sam took the stand. It was a catastrophic decision. For 3 days, prosecutors cross-examined him, and the polished narrative he'd perfected for media interviews disintegrated under scrutiny. He claimed he didn't remember key conversations. He blamed employees for misunderstanding his instructions. He contradicted his own tweets, his own public statements, his own testimony from minutes earlier. Judge Kaplan grew visibly frustrated, repeatedly instructing Sam to answer questions directly instead of deflecting. At one point, after Sam gave yet another evasive response, the judge leaned forward and said, "Just answer the question, Mr. Bankman-Fried." The jury saw through him. They saw a man who'd cultivated an image of altruistic genius while running one of the most brazen frauds in financial history. A man who'd lied to investors, customers, regulators, and the public, then lied again when caught. On November 2nd, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk article that started the collapse, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty. On all 7 counts. Sam showed no emotion. His parents, sitting in the gallery, wept. 5 months later, on March 28, 2024, Sam Bankman-Fried stood before Judge Kaplan for sentencing. The prosecution requested 40 to 50 years, a life sentence for a 32-year-old man. The defense argued for 5 to 6.5 years, claiming Sam had no criminal history and had acted out of misguided optimism, not greed. Judge Kaplan was unmoved. There is absolutely no doubt that Mr. Bankman-Fried orchestrated one of the largest financial frauds in history, he said. He knew it was wrong, he knew it was criminal, and he did it anyway. The judge cited Sam's perjury on the stand, his attempts to obstruct justice, and his complete lack of remorse. Even in court filings, Sam had continued to minimize his actions, blaming everyone but himself. The defendant's assertion that customers and creditors will be paid in full is misleading, is logically flawed, is speculative, Kaplan said. A thief who takes his loot to Las Vegas and successfully bets the stolen money is not entitled to a discount on the sentence by using his Las Vegas winnings to pay back what he stole. The sentence, 25 years in federal prison. Sam stood, expressionless, as the words echoed through the courtroom. 25 years. He'd be 57 when released, if he served the full term. The boy genius, the effective altruist, the future of finance, would spend the prime of his life in a federal penitentiary. His parents sobbed. His lawyers promised to appeal. But the message was clear. Fraud has consequences. No matter how compelling the narrative, no matter how noble the stated intentions. The story of Sam Bankman-Fried didn't end with a prison sentence. It rippled outward, through an industry, through millions of lives, through the very fabric of trust and digital finance. More than 1 million creditors lost money in FTX's collapse. School teachers who'd invested their retirement savings. College students who'd put their tuition into crypto. Families in developing countries who'd used FTX to send remittances. Small businesses that had kept their treasuries in what they believed was a safe, regulated exchange. For many, the money was never recovered. Despite bankruptcy proceedings that clawed back hundreds of millions from political campaigns, real estate sales, and venture investments, the mathematics of fraud are unforgiving. When you steal $8 billion and gamble it away, you can't make people whole with apologies and asset sales. Some creditors would eventually receive partial repayments. Pennies on the dollar, calculated based on crypto prices from November 2022, not the higher values their holdings reached afterward. It was insult added to injury. They'd lost their money, their trust, and any potential gains from the market's recovery. But the damage extended far beyond individual victims. The FTX collapse triggered a regulatory reckoning. Politicians who'd taken Sam's donations scrambled to distance themselves, returning money or donating it to charity. Congressional hearings were convened. The SEC and CFTC launched investigations into other exchanges, suddenly skeptical of an industry they'd been cautiously embracing. Gary Gensler, chairman of the SEC, was vindicated. He'd been warning for years that crypto exchanges were operating outside the law, commingling customer funds with corporate assets, offering unregistered securities. The industry had dismissed him as a dinosaur, a regulator who didn't understand innovation. FTX proved he'd been right all along. Internationally, regulators in the European Union, United Kingdom, and Asia tightened restrictions. Know your customer requirements became stricter. Proof of reserves became mandatory. The Wild West era of cryptocurrency, where charismatic founders could raise billions with little oversight, was over. The effective altruism movement, which Sam had championed and weaponized for his public image, faced its own crisis of conscience. How had a philosophy built on rigorous ethical reasoning produced a fraudster? How had a community of supposedly rational, mathematically minded utilitarians failed to see the warning signs? Some members distanced themselves, arguing Sam had never truly believed in EA principles. He'd simply used them as cover. Others engaged in painful self-reflection, questioning whether their emphasis on earning to give had created perverse incentives, encouraging people to pursue wealth by any means necessary, with ethics as an afterthought. Will MacAskill, the Oxford philosopher who'd popularized effective altruism and mentored Sam, issued a public apology. He called FTX's collapse devastating and admitted he'd been completely wrong about Sam's character. But the damage to the movement was done. Foundations built on FTX donations had to shut down. Causes that had received millions were now tainted by association. And what of the journalist who started it all? Ian Allison never sought the spotlight. His November 2, 2022 article for CoinDesk was intended as investigative journalism, not a kill shot. He'd obtained a leaked document, verified its authenticity, and reported what it showed. He hadn't called for FTX's destruction. He'd simply asked questions the company couldn't answer. But those questions were enough. In the months after FTX's collapse, Allison was praised as a hero by fraud victims and criticized by crypto enthusiasts who blamed the media for causing a bank run. Some argued that if Allison hadn't published the article, FTX might have survived, might have traded out of its problems, might have made customers whole. It was a fantasy. The fraud had been ongoing for years. The $8 billion hole wasn't created by a news article. It was created by Sam Bankman-Fried's systematic theft of customer funds. Allison didn't destroy FTX. He exposed it. His article was a reminder of journalism's essential function: to ask uncomfortable questions, to scrutinize power, to hold institutions accountable even when they seem invincible. Without that leaked balance sheet, without Allison's reporting, the fraud might have continued for months or years longer, the losses growing exponentially, the damage spreading further. One document, one journalist, and a $32 billion empire collapsed in less than a week. Today, Sam Bankman-Fried sits in a federal prison, an inmate among thousands, stripped of wealth, influence, and the carefully crafted image that once made him untouchable. He's appealing his conviction, claiming legal errors and procedural unfairness. His lawyers argue the sentence was too harsh, that he's not a danger to society, that he deserves a second chance. But the victims remember. They remember the tweets claiming FTX is fine, the interviews where Sam promised their funds were safe, the altruistic rhetoric that masked a simple, ancient crime: theft. Caroline Ellison received 2 years in prison for her cooperation. Gary Wang and Nishad Singh received lighter sentences still. Time served, probation, their futures salvageable because they'd turned on Sam, testified truthfully, and expressed genuine remorse. The crypto industry survived, though scarred. Bitcoin still trades, Ethereum still processes transactions, believers still dream of decentralized finance. But the lesson of FTX lingers. Innovation without accountability is just fraud with better marketing. And somewhere, in the sprawling archive of financial crime, Sam Bankman-Fried's name now sits beside Bernie Madoff, Elizabeth Holmes, and Jordan Belfort, brilliant minds who believed the rules didn't apply to them, who thought they could outrun the truth, who learned too late that reality always catches up. The boy genius who wanted to save the world ended up stealing from it instead. And it took just one journalist with one leaked document to bring it all crashing down.